All right, scholars, here we go. We're going to start our reading of the Odyssey by Homer. And your first assignment is books 1 through 4, which goes from pages 1 through 49. So think of it like chapters. But keep in mind, this is, again, an epic and it's written in poetry. So it may be a little more difficult to break down and understand. So I have resources to help you. And let me take a look. So first of all, the whole first book starts with an invocation. So I'm going to put some notes down here. An invocation is when the poet is speaking to the muse, and this is basically to help the poet tell the story well. And we also have a sort of catalog here. Let me just finish this thought. Speaking to a muse, let me be a good storyteller. Whoops. Okay. And so then we have this catalog, a listing, just like a catalog you get in the mail as a listing of things you can buy. We find out Odysseus is a wanderer. He is a plunderer of Troy, and that he has been harried. He has learned of distant men. He weathered days and nights at sea. He fought to save life and bring shipmates home. So we're getting a lot of background knowledge here right away at the beginning, so you know what kind of story you're getting into. And then the other thing I want you to know as we get started, if you see Helios, this refers to Apollo. And our starting point for book 1 is Calypso's Island. This is where Odysseus is trapped. Sometimes you will see Calypso spelled with a C. And so just be aware of that. This is a translation by Robert Fitzgerald. Different translators will either translate this as a K because it's a K sound. Others will translate it as a C. Just be aware it's the same person, just an alternative spelling. What we find out is that Odysseus has lost all of his men. We're going to have a line, not by will nor valor could he save them. In other words, there was nothing Odysseus could do. His men were reckless, and they feasted on Apollo's cattle, the cattle of Lord Helios. And by doing so, this was a grievous sin. And so he killed them. And it's said very poetically, took from their eyes the dawn of their return. That means he killed them. Took from the dawn of their eyes. Took from their eyes the dawn of their return. So a lot of the belief was that the eyes were the windows to the soul. And so if the eyes would be removed, the person would be no more. So I'm going to see how long it takes to read this and stop and explain. You thought my other videos were too long? I don't know. This could take forever. Sing in me, muse, and through me tell the story of that man skilled in all ways of contending. This is then saying, let me tell the story of Odysseus. He is skilled in so many different ways. And we're going to see throughout this epic how he does have different skills. The wanderer harried for years on end after he plundered the stronghold on the proud height of Troy. This does take place after the Trojan War. And so Odysseus was supposed to be heading home, but he ends up being gone from his home for 20 years, the fighting in the Trojan War plus his wanderings. He saw the townlands and learned the minds of many distant men, and weathered many bitter nights and days in his deep heart at sea, while he fought only to save his life, to bring his shipmates home. But not by will nor valor could he save them, for their own recklessness destroyed them all. Children and fools they killed and feasted on the cattle of Lord Helios, the sun. And he who moves all day through heaven took from their eyes the dawn of their return. Of these adventures, Muse, daughter of Zeus, tell us in our time. Lift the great song again. Begin when all the rest who left behind them headlong death in battle or at sea had long ago returned, while he alone still hungered for home and wife. So basically, everybody else who had fought in the Trojan War had made it home, everybody except for Odysseus. And we're going to get a glimpse into what was going on back on the island of Ithaca, which is where his home was, and see how that is a problem for his poor wife and his son. Her ladyship, Calypso, clung to him in her sea-hallowed caves, a nymph, immortal and most beautiful, who craved him for her own. Okay, time and time again, Odysseus meets these lovely women, and they want him to stay with them. And he has to try to remain faithful to Penelope. Poor Odysseus. He's got a rough life. Okay, the next page gives us a complete spoiler alert. So basically tells us what's going to happen before we get into the whole poem and read it for ourselves. Pretty much the way Sir Gawain and the Green Knight did that. And when long years and seasons wheeling brought around that point of time, ordained for him to make his passage homeward, trials and dangers even so attended him, even in Ithaca near those he loved. Yet all the gods had pitied Lord Odysseus, all but Poseidon, raging cold and rough against the brave king, till he came ashore at last on his own land. So we find out he does get home. But now that god had gone far off among the sunburnt races, most remote of men, at earth's two verges, in sunset lands and lands of the rising sun, to be regaled by smoke of thigh bones burning, haunches of rams and bulls 100-fold. He lingered and delighted at the banquet side. So what happened is, usually the gods are hanging around Mount Olympus, although Poseidon's god of the sea, so anyway, he's basically out of town, and the other gods and goddesses, at least Athena, are going to take advantage of this because Poseidon has sworn to get revenge on Odysseus. He doesn't want to see him come home, but since he's busy inhaling the smoke from the offerings to him, he kind of puts Odysseus out of his mind and misses out on this opportunity to make sure Odysseus doesn't get home. Athena, though, has just been waiting for this. The gods are basically sitting around on Mount Olympus complaining about mortals. In the bright hall of Zeus upon Olympus, the other gods were all at home, and Zeus, the father of gods and men, made conversation, for he had meditated on Aegisthus, dead by the hand of Agamemnon's son Orestes, and spoke his thought aloud before them all. My word, how mortals take the gods to task. All their afflictions come from us, we here. And what of their own failings? Greed and folly double the suffering in the lot of man. See how Aegisthus, for his double portion, stole Agamemnon's wife and killed the soldier on his homecoming day. And yet Aegisthus knew that his own doom lay in this. We gods had warned him, sent down Hermes, Argefontes, our most observant courier, to say, don't touch the man, don't kill the man, don't touch his wife, or face a reckoning with Orestes the day he comes of age and wants his patrimony. Friendly advice, but would Aegisthus take it? Now he has paid the reckoning in full. So, talking about some of the characters who had been involved in the Trojan War, Agamemnon was killed by Aegisthus, who was taking Agamemnon's wife, and then it was Agamemnon's son, Orestes, who gets his revenge once he's old enough. And the gods are saying, oh, these mortals, they always blame it on us, but hey, they're greedy and foolish too, so it's really their fault. Now, throughout this whole epic, know that Athena really has a soft spot for Odysseus, and so she's going to jump in here to this conversation and make her plea to help him out.